The decision of former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, former Finance Minister Grant Robertson, the Labour leader Chris Hipkins, and former Health Minister and still current MP Aisha Verrall, not to appear in front of the COVID-19 Royal Commission is not simply an act of political cowardice, but one of the most appalling acts of social irresponsibility that this country has experienced for many, many years. It's almost a denial of humanity, a refusal that we all know stems from the fact that this quartet, Ardern, Robertson, Hipkins and Verrall, not only think that they'll be found guilty of something if they appear in public at the Royal Commission of the COVID inquiry, but they will be found to have failed in their stewardship of this nation during, well, the more hysterical days of the COVID response, and that they were in good part driving that hysteria and imposing an authoritarian orthodoxy upon not just New Zealanders, but also stopping those New Zealanders who are overseas from coming home, from being with loved ones at the time of an international shutdown. You know, it should be the end, I have to say, of the political career of Labour leader Chris Hipkins and Aisha Verrall for that matter, but they, perhaps more than Ardern and Robertson, have an ongoing, I would argue, taxpayer-funded role and responsibility, and it's obvious that accountability isn't one of those roles as far as they see it. Now, Ardern has fled. She has fled this country with her family and is essentially living in exile, a self-imposed exile, possibly a very lucrative exile, but an exile nonetheless, and she ain't coming back anytime soon. So I'm sort of not surprised, because she fled the country even before the last election. And then there's Robertson, who has fled also, but has decamped to be as camp as he likes, as the Vice-Chancellor, and in the Vice-Chancellor's aerie, down at Otago University on $660,000 a year, an obscene wage and salary for a man with a BA, and it has to be said, an extraordinary career as a finance minister. And I don't mean that in a complimentary sense. Now, Hipkins and Verrall, though, they're still here. They're still seeking to be the Prime Minister and presumably the next Minister of Health, and their refusal, an act of defiance of real moment, compared to Chloe Swarbrick's theatrics flouncing of yesterday, their refusal gives a very clear indication that they believe in their heart of hearts we were never wrong and we don't have to explain ourselves to anybody, much less the public of New Zealand. I mean, if that's the mentality that inhabits the leadership of the Labour Party, then heaven help them and us if they were ever to be returned to power with those two individuals anywhere near the levers of responsibility in the future. Now, what's their reason for not appearing? So let's be fair here. Why? They must have a good reason, right? Well, not to appear and answer the questions of the Commissioner Grant Illingworth and his fellow commissioners? Well, here it goes. They've appeared before in private. What? They've appeared before in private. Apparently they've given evidence in private. Yeah? Yeah, but it's not in public, is it? No, but they've done it in private. Yeah, but aren't you wanting to know what the evidence that they've given is? Well, they've given it in private. Yes, but wouldn't you want to know what they were saying? Why did you act this way? What was the response to it? What information did you choose? What were you, in retrospect, do you think that was the right thing to do? Were there other options that you had? No. That's going to be in private. So only the commissioners and presumably those who gave the evidence know what that evidence is, because it was given in private. We don't know what they said. And apparently this has been used as some sort of convention that in the past, ministers or ex-ministers got some immunity from public explanation and scrutiny, and to why they stuffed up, presumably, which is why there was a Royal Commission of Inquiry this time and last time before, etc. So in other words, it goes like this. Because there is a convention that's also stupid, that ministers of the Crown somehow get a private hearing away from the hoi polloi and all that sort of nonsense and media introspection and the normal people who gave their evidence in public and have to. No, because that of a stupid decision in the past, we can be stupid today. Oh, yes, that works. Also, they said that their appearance would fuel, wait for this, the conspiracy theorists. So let me get this right. If all four of you go in front of the Royal Commission and openly say, this is what we were facing, this is what we had the options of, this is what we chose to do, and that's, we thought we were doing the right thing, which would seem to be the obvious sort of course that they would take. This apparently would launch 1,000 conspiracy theories. Oh, really? So in public launches conspiracy theories, and private, no, they're conspiracy theories will slope off and do something else, won't they? You're right. And then Ardern said, well, I gave evidence. Oh, did you? You've given evidence to this Royal Commission? Well, no. I've given evidence to the Royal Commission number 1. The one that I set up. The one with the limited terms of references. The one that didn't look at the economic, the health, the social consequences of all the decisions we made. The one that was so confined and was not looking in the past or considering it at all, but was looking towards the future if another pandemic should occur. That inquiry. I gave evidence to that one, but the one that got really granular and is going to actually see, did I make the right decision and what were the consequences of those responses to the public of this country? No, I'm not going to that one. But I went to number 1. That seems to be her answer. And then Hipkins, and I love this one, has said that if they did appear in public, their particular sentences and paragraphs would be taken out of context, even though you see the whole thing, providing, quote unquote, a platform for those who have conspiracy theorist views. There is one thing worse than a conspiracy theorist, I've discovered, and it's somebody who has conspiracies about conspiracy theorists. And Chris Hipkins, Jacinda Ardern, you're at the top of that list. You are so spooked by apparently the conspiracy theorists of this world that none of the rest of us take seriously, but you do, that you won't even appear in front of an inquiry for fear that your words might be taken out of context. Yes, but the whole quantum of them would be there. We'd be seeing your entire testimony, but oh dear Lord, they might take it out of context. So I'll give my evidence in private, or in Jacinda Ardern's case, I won't give it at all. And then that won't lead to any conspiracy theories, will it? Yes, run that logic through and see how far it gets you. Listen, not appearing, not being publicly accountable, not explaining their actions to a public still daily affected by the activities and actions of these four, this querulous quartet, if you like. Now that's going to fuel conspiracy theorists. But that's, and more likely to create, and many more, probably quite responsible theories as to why this four didn't appear in front of this inquiry in public and explain their actions. Illingworth and his inquiry, just by the way, have the legal power to enforce the attendance of Ardern, Robertson, Verrill and Hipkins. They've chosen not to do it. The fatal four will get away. But one would argue that Mr. Illingworth, KC, and his fellow commissioners have failed us as well. Their responsibility was to find the truth, to establish what really happened, where and why, and what the consequences are, so that we can learn the lessons should we face something ever so similar in the future, and that we wouldn't make those mistakes again. Appearing in front of the country to explain their decisions and the effects that are felt to this day. Everything from the downturn in employment in this country to the state of our economy, to the fact we don't have enough money to go and fix education, health, police, and a whole series of other social and economic woes in this country because we spent it all. The lack of trust of public health institutions and of public institutions in general that came out of the COVID response. All these things are needing of explanation to all of us who are affected by them to this day. Some who lost their jobs and have never got them back again, and who have been severely hurt, harmed, and economically buffeted by the most appalling of decisions, well, in retrospect now, that turned them into second-class citizens and people who were reviled and cast apart from the rest of New Zealand society. I would have thought, at the very least, just as an act of political but also individual integrity and decency, that these four, in such prominent roles, with such power over our lives and over a country, had at the very least a moral duty to appear and explain to us all, and to give us, and for us to be able to make up our own minds as to whether or not, given the circumstances, that was appropriate or not. But the really interesting thing is that by these four fleeing from their responsibilities, fleeing from their moral duty, and fleeing from any public defence of their actions, they've rather confirmed to us all that they know they made the wrong decisions, that they kept on making them, and they don't want to be held accountable for their actions. Far from taking a cone of silence and wrapping itself around those four and that somehow protecting them, all it has done is condemn them for the moral cowards, but also the bad decision makers and appalling policy decision makers that they are. Those are my thoughts this morning. What are yours?